unlock an additional room near the servers.
Understood. I'm back, Gaia.
Hello, Aloy. What would you like to discuss?
Have you been able to make use of Demeter's functions?
Yes. I was able to mitigate most soil conditions and restore a temporary balance. You should notice less rampant plant growth in the area.
Maybe that'll give Plainsong's fields a chance to recover.
Unfortunately, recovery in that area is unlikely without the assistance of the Utaru's land gods. I have discussed this matter with Zoe. I believe we may have a workaround.
Yeah, I'm helping her out with that. The missing subordinate functions. What can you tell me about them?
Artemis rewilded the Earth with a variety of animal species. Eleuthia was responsible for gestating, nurturing, and acculturating a new generation of human beings. Apollo was tasked with preserving, organizing, and disseminating vast archives of human knowledge and cultural achievements. Unfortunately, all archived Apollo data was purged on the 2nd of February, 2066, by order of Ted Faro.
Pharaoh, huh? I really hate that guy.
Understandable. He appears to have been pathologically narcissistic, impulsive, and unstable.
All 3 of the missing functions have already served their purpose, or were prevented from doing so. Do you still need them?
Restoring their remaining elements would increase my heuristic processing density, empowering my overall function. Unfortunately, as we now know they are in the possession of Far Zenith, attaining them in the short term is very likely impossible.
I guess our best shot at recovering them is by taking over the Zenith base. But we'll need Hephaestus and a bunch of combat machines to do that.
Correct.
Were you able to make use of Poseidon?
Yes. Many rivers, streams, and lakes associated with the regional watershed have been detoxified. As a result, red algae growth levels have seen a marked decline. According to my data, however, it appears a localized occurrence of red algae continues to persist near the coast.
Maybe I'll look into it when I can. So, once Hephaestus has been recovered and merged, you'll regain the capacity to mass-produce machines at cauldrons around the world.
Yes, and to program their behavioral routines, or even control them directly.
So you could build an army of machines. Attack the Zeniths and take them out.
It is in my nature to take any and all necessary steps to preserve life on Earth, human life above all. So yes, once I have been empowered with the capacities of Hephaestus, I could design, build, and command such an army. Given the nature of the Far Zenith threat, doing so may be our only option. I must admit, however, that I have misgivings about using such technology to kill, no matter how aggressive the enemy.
That's good. It means you have a conscience. As Elizabeth intended.
Indeed.
There's something I'm still trying to figure out. Why was Demeter using flying machines to distribute metal flowers?
In its deranged state, Demeter was defending itself against a robotic swarm that would devour all plant life.
It thought the Pharaoh Plague was still happening?
It feared it would come again. As part of its directive of reseeding Earth's vegetation, it sought to protect plant life at all costs. And considering it had 20 years to proliferate, I expect you will continue to find the fruits of its efforts for some time.
It's a good thing I have the code to dissolve the vines, then. So, Poseidon spent the last 20 years hiding out in Las Vegas. From the data I found, it seems the city had an advanced water reclamation system. Is that why Poseidon went there?
Most likely. In an effort to protect itself, Poseidon sought out a safe harbor where it could access water supply functions. There, buried and encased in a protective dome, it could guard against any threats.
Like 3 Oseram showmen?
I suspect that was not the first time it felt the need to repel trespassers.
You mentioned that the superstorms have subsided. Is that Ether at work?
Yes. Thanks to Ether's capabilities, weather patterns in the local region should mostly stabilize for the time being.
That'll be a relief for the Tenakth. One of their villages is still recovering after a mudslide caused the whole place to flood.
I will continue to stabilize the atmosphere for as long as I can.
Why did Ether take up residence in an ancient war museum?
As with the other subordinate functions, Ether needed to install itself on a processor with adequate storage and power. The one in the museum appears to have been sufficient, given that the holographic displays were still active.
So Ether was assured it could stay for as long as it needed to.
Correct. Though it is curious that it chose a place surrounded with the ancient ruins of aircraft.
Maybe it also felt at home there. Beta believes the Zeniths want to use the terraforming system to wipe out life on Earth. Start over, so they can build it how they want.
Further supporting our hypothesis.
But why? Given their technology, they could wipe out the tribes of the world by easier means. And if they're the same people who left Earth 1,000 years ago, wouldn't they want the biosphere to be as it was?
It is likely they adjusted to different planetary conditions in their colony on Sirius. They may be trying to recreate that environment here.
Turning Earth into a new Sirius. Their own personal playground. So the Zeniths are the same people who left Earth. Physically immortal. How'd they figure it out?
From what we know of Far Zenith, it is plausible that prominent geneticists and engineers were offered a place aboard the Odyssey in exchange for their expertise. Given enough time, technology, and resources, any challenge can be overcome.
Like how Minerva eventually generated the deactivation codes for the Pharaoh Plague.
Exactly.
The Zeniths. Gerard, Eric, Tilda, Verbena. Beta said they were some of the most powerful people on Earth. I think Elizabeth knew one of them. Tilda. Did she ever mention her to you?
No. Elizabeth often spoke of her work, or told stories of her mother and her childhood. If she knew this Tilda, she did not disclose it with me. What we can conclude from your and Beta's experiences is that the Zeniths are ruthless in pursuit of their goal. To protect life on Earth, they must be stopped.
The extinction signal didn't just wake Hades. It made every subordinate function self-aware. Why?
I have wondered this myself. So far as I can tell, Hades was the sole target, and the partial sentience imparted to other subordinate functions was incidental.
A signal that precise would require thorough knowledge of the system. How could the Zeniths know that?
From the records on your focus, it appears Far Zenith had an informant during the development of Zero Dawn.
Hank Shaw. He was supposed to steal a copy of the system for Far Zenith, but Elizabeth and Travis Tate caught him first.
Yes. It is likely Far Zenith acquired knowledge on the system's design through him, despite his failure.
So from what Beta told me, I guess we can assume the Zenith's technology is powerful in all sorts of ways, right?
Yes. As your encounters with them amply demonstrate, they appear to make extensive use of robotic servitors. Further, they They seem to be equipped with some kind of protective energy field that shields them from harm.
They seemed indestructible, but that weapon the rebels used stripped their shield somehow.
Throughout history, every defensive technology has eventually been defeated by an offensive counterpart. While we lack the anti-shielding weapon, were I to absorb Hephaestus and utilize it to create a large force of combat machines, no shielding could withstand such an assault indefinitely.
So there's hope.
Always.
How did you figure out that the extinction signal came from Sirius?
The key came with data on your focus, from Silent's interrogation of Hades. The duration of the signal itself, 17.22 years.
That doesn't make sense. You said that the signal took 8.6 years to arrive from Sirius. Why would the signal keep transmitting after it was received and you blew yourself up?
Because the sender didn't know that had happened until it received notice from Hades.
Which would take another 8.6 years to get back.
Correct. Only then would the sender stop broadcasting, after a total of 17.22 years. So the duration, halved, gave me the distance the signal traveled. With that in mind, I simply scanned my astronomical database for any relevant location 8.6 light-years away. Because it was far Zenith's intended destination, Sirius was the only logical source.
Beta's convinced we won't be able to capture Hephaestus. With that attitude, do you really think she'll be able to build the rig and pulse generators?
It may take some coaxing, but with some assistance I am confident she will.
I don't get her, Gaia. She's so quick to assume we'll fail. She's nothing like what I thought she'd be. I guess it'll be best if she stays here when we go to Gemini. How's Kotallo doing?
I have detected that the loss of his arm still deeply pains him. In an effort to remedy this, I have discussed a potential solution with him. I believe he will want to fill you in on the details.
A solution? I'll check in with him when I can, then. How are things around here?
Zoe has been studying the morphology of her land gods in an effort to understand their sickness. Without the abilities of Hephaestus, I am unfortunately unable to correct their programming. However, due to Zoe's perseverance, we may have a workaround.
Yeah, she filled me in. It sounds promising. Varl and Zoe seem to like spending time together.
Indeed. While studying Old World data, Zoe discovered references to a dietary lifestyle known as vegetarianism. She appreciated the similarities with Utaru practices and encouraged Varl to try out this lifestyle.
And how did that go?
I believe they have agreed to disagree.
How's Erend handling things?
He is becoming increasingly accustomed to use of the focus, after an initial incident.
What did he do?
He unfortunately crushed his first focus as he attempted to affix it to his temple. Amongst a number of Oseram curses, I believe he also blamed the focus for being dainty. He has given repeated assurances that it will not happen again.
Well, good thing we have a lot of extras, I guess. So there's a few people here now, and they're learning. All about you, the ancient world. Almost like what was supposed to happen before Apollo was purged.
Yes. While the loss of the Apollo database was catastrophic, there is still much that can be gleaned from the data you have uncovered. For instance, Varl has been reviewing the last recorded entries from those who perished during the Pharaoh Plague. Hearing their hopes and fears made him quite somber.
Anything I should be worried about?
I do not believe so. I have elected not to intervene, to allow him to process this on his own terms.
All this data I've picked up in ancient bunkers and ruins. I guess I never really thought that other people would be looking at it.
Based on my observations, your companions engage quite frequently with this material. Erend has asked on numerous occasions about birthday parties. He appears perplexed by the tradition of serving a sweet confection, as it conflicts with the Oseram tradition of serving sparkling stout ale. He also suggested we host a party for you, as a surprise.
Yeah, no thanks.
That is what I predicted.
Is Katalo getting along with everyone?
Yes, though he prefers to spend most of the time alone. He appears to be collating data on war machine progression and significant battles during the Pharaoh Plague, to aid in the creation of a war map of Operation Enduring Victory. I believe he aims to study the tactics of Old World warfare.
I'd be interested in seeing that.
It appears to be a private pastime for him. He has repeatedly declined my offers to assist his research.
So our plan to capture Hephaestus. Let's go over it again.
As you wish. Thanks to Beta's test, we now know that Hephaestus will not respond to your Alpha clearance, which is why you will need to procure Ted Pharaoh's Omega clearance.
Right. From his personal bunker, Thebes.
While you are gone, I will assist Beta in building the transport rig and pulse generators. When we get to Gemini, I will need to be installed on one of the facility's cores. The second core is for Hephaestus. Using Omega clearance will allow you to trap it.
And then you'll be able to absorb it.
Not quite. You will need to manually remove Hephaestus's malicious code before the merge.
How long will that take?
There are calculations I still must run, but I estimate a few hours.
And during that time, the others will create a distraction for us using the pulse generators, right?
Correct. They will each take position at a cauldron door and fire off their device. The energy surge should mask our activities until the merge is complete.
And then we'll have everything we need to defeat the Zeniths. Sounds like a plan. So now that you have Ether, Demeter, and Poseidon, how's the biosphere looking?
In the local region, conditions have improved. Superstorms have subsided. Water sources have been purified, and soil conditions remediated. These improvements will stave off environmental collapse for a few additional months.
Well, with luck, soon you'll have Hephaestus. Then you'll be able to fix the biosphere for good, right?
Correct. I will be able to design and produce robotic agents to permanently reverse the environmental damage that has accumulated.
There's something I've been wondering. How could Ted Pharaoh create a clearance level higher than Alpha? Elizabeth made sure he wouldn't interfere with the project.
It is plausible he tasked his own engineers with creating a backdoor to the Zero Dawn system, without Elizabeth's knowledge. My predecessor did not even know of its existence until he activated it to purge the Apollo database. It is, in effect, a blind spot. One that will allow us to subdue Hephaestus. And fortunately, thanks to Beta's information, we know where Omega clearance may be procured.
Right. Somewhere in San Francisco. Gaia? What was Elizabeth like?
Her presence is interwoven with my memories. The moment I came online, she was there. We exchanged greetings, names, then set to our task. It was the first of many conversations. I enjoyed being in her company, listening to her stories. She was my creator, my guide.
Your friend.
Yes. When I reviewed the data on your focus, I was saddened to learn of her fate, though I am glad she made it home. I deeply wish she did not have to be alone.
She was okay with that. She gave all of herself. The only one who could. Thanks, Gaia. So, Project Zero Dawn. The greatest minds in the world, all working to build the terraforming system while the Pharaoh Plague devoured the planet. What was it like?
Personnel worked in rotations, at all hours of the day. Resources and technology were secured from across the world. Within a month of the project's conception, I was launched and began my education. Elizabeth encouraged me to spend time with the rest of the Zero Dawn staff. She said it was important to experience many personalities and perspectives to aid in my emotional development.
What were they like?
Scared, hopeful, determined. They were hurtling toward technological achievements on a scale never before attempted. I owe everything to their dedication.
So Gemini has 2 data cores. I've never seen a cauldron like that. But you mentioned something about seismic activity?
When my predecessor attempted to build the cauldron, construction was disrupted by a series of earthquakes. The data core had already been built, but the rest of the facility sustained damage. So, she began again. A second core was built. However, when more tremblers occurred, she abandoned the site.
Lucky for us. Are the quakes still happening?
No, though they did also create instabilities in other facilities in the region.
So the Hades Proving Lab, where I found the Gaia kernel. It used to be a Pharaoh research facility?
Yes. Prior to appropriation by Zero Dawn, the facility was used to engineer and test advanced computer viruses. It appears to have been one of many research initiatives by Pharaoh Automated Solutions.
I guess it wasn't enough to build automated killing machines. He wanted viruses to infect them with too. So, a while back, before the battle at Meridian, I went into Banuk territory. I discovered another AI there, one not related to Zero Dawn. Cyan. It was created to oversee operations for a volcanic stabilization project, and had spent the last 1,000 years in isolation. I'm guessing you didn't know about it?
No. From the data on your focus, it seems that Cyan was cut off from the outside world, an effort by its creators to protect it from the Pharaoh Plague.
Any chance it could help us now?
I have already attempted contact, with no success. Given its previous experience with accepting an outside network request, I imagine it is unwilling to do so again.
Right. Because last time Hephaestus enslaved it. Well, that's too bad. I think the two of you would have had a lot to talk about. The processor Ether was installed on was part of an ancient war museum, a memorial to something called the Hot Zone Crisis. Do you know anything about it?
My knowledge of historical events was unfortunately lost with the Apollo database. However, climate data indicates a peak in regional temperatures in the 2030s. Such conditions would see extreme, prolonged droughts, an increase in dust storms, and a loss of habitable landmass.
But they wouldn't have built a museum in the middle of a wasteland. So I guess things got better eventually.
Yes. Data suggests that temperatures returned to average levels in the clawback era of the 2040s.
There was an ancient tank embedded in the bulwark, buried under a bunch of boulders. Any idea how it got there?
During the Pharaoh Plague, the US military resumed the use of human combatants, as automated machinery was unreliable. It is possible the vehicle was part of a pre-automated war fleet.
So they fought against the Pharaoh machines in the valley, until the mountain was blasted apart and buried them. So the facility where I recovered Demeter used to be a Pharaoh agricultural research facility. It's where they created the biomass conversion system, but also adamantine wreath. Did Elizabeth know they were working on that?
It is likely she was briefed on other efforts to combat the machine swarm, though her focus was devoted only to Zero Dawn.
That makes sense. But they actually got the wreaths to work. If they've been able to deploy it against the Pharaoh Plague in time...
Using the data you recovered on the project, I ran several simulations and have concluded that it would never have worked. In all scenarios, the Pharaoh war machines would eventually hack and deactivate the wreath before they could contain the swarm.
So Zero Dawn really was the only solution. There was a lot of data in the greenhouse facility about agriculture. Do you think it'll help the Quen fix their homeland?
I will run a query. Complete. The data contains information about novel crop production methods, which may be beneficial to the tribe in the long term.
But new crops aren't going to save the world, so I guess it's on us.
It is.
When I dove down into Vegas, I found data about the man who built the dome over the city, Stanley Chen. It turns out he was a member of Far Zenith. But if he loved Vegas so much, why did he abandon it? Why not try to save it?
The Zeniths at their core have proven to be exceptional survivalists. Faced with overwhelming odds of extinction, they chose to flee.
Even still, what he achieved. Water to the wasteland, an entire city brought back to life. 1,000 years later, the whole place was still on standby, just waiting for someone to come along and wake it up. So this facility, the Regional Control Center, it was meant to oversee the terraforming system?
For the local region, yes. Had humans received their education from the Apollo database, they would have then been guided here to assume operation. As that never happened, this place remained vacant.
Until Minerva decided to settle here. So I guess this room was meant to keep an eye on conditions outside?
Yes. From here, the facility's operators would have been able to observe weather and machine activity in real time. It may be possible to restore more of this room's functionality, should you find and reconnect additional camera feeds.
I'll keep a lookout. I found some data in one of the rooms you unlocked. It mentioned that there are still functional seed banks beneath this facility. Why is it there?
My predecessor was tasked with reconstituting the biosphere with primary and secondary plant species. Had everything gone according to plan, humans would have eventually been able to introduce tertiary species, including new crops.
Can we access them now?
Unfortunately, it will have to wait. I require control over the machines in order to access and distribute the preserved seed stock.
And for that we need a Festus. It's something to look into later then. I'll be off.
Farewell, for now.